Last time I was playing a game of Mordheim with my buddies, and we played it kind of on the suburbs or on the entrance to the town. So we had quite a bit of terrain in the rural area before the city of Mordheim itself. And I've noticed that I don't really have a lot of nice rural scattered terrain. You know, some rustic things. And I decided to change it. I decided to make some fences to mark out the fields of the farmers that used to live in the vicinity of the city of Mordheim. It is all done with stuff that you definitely already have at your house. You aren't going to have to buy anything. No balsa, no expensive paints, no expensive bits. Just stuff laying around in your trash can or in your kitchen or anywhere. My name is Jagelsdorf and I hope you like what you're going to see. So what you want to do first is clean up your workspace a bit and put up your favorite Canadian YouTuber as background noise. After that you want to cut up a piece of cardboard into strips of different lengths and try to pair them up so that you can glue them together in 2 layers later. Why this is important you'll see in a second. I glue them with some PVA glue and then leave to dry under weight so that it doesn't warp and bonds really good. To be honest, now that I have done it all and recorded it all, I don't think that gluing 2 strips together is really necessary, but we'll come to this later. And now my sorry attempt at a cool transition. So after some time, after the glue is dry, they will be much more stable, and you want to trim them to give them a uniform look. You also want to have rounded edges so that you can put your fences any way you want together and it will look good. After that, you want to whip out your trusty knife. With my knife in hand, I make holes in each of my strips about 1 centimeter apart, and I try to do them in 2 directions to have a nice cross where I can later insert my fence posts. When you're done with poking holes, we need something to put into them. For that we're gonna need toothpicks and lots of them. Lots of them. You'll need to snap each and every one of them in 2 and snap and snap again and snap again and snap again until you can't snap no more. And then you're going to do it more and more. Anyway, so now you want to secure your fence posts in your base and struggle with your glue, and struggle a lot because you're stupid and you forgot to close it last night and it got gunked up. So before I said that it maybe wasn't the best idea to glue 2 strips of cardboard together, or maybe that it wasn't necessary, and now I would like to explain why. Initially I glued them together to have more thickness to hold my toothpicks inside when I glue them with PVA glue, but the problem with PVA glue is that it needs a long time, or quite a long time, to dry and bond, so the toothpicks weren't really easy to insert and they weren't really stable, they weren't holding. So I switched quickly into hot glue, and when you do things with hot glue you may just as well take a piece of chipboard or MDF or anything and or just 1 plain strip of cardboard and glued it directly onto it without poking holes for it. It would hold just fine. Before we move to the next important step, let's do some basing. For these I used just PVA glue and some sand. For one of them I used my proprietary putty, but it's really not very important what you use at this stage. Just to give it some texture. We're gonna cover most of it in flocking later anyway, so it isn't really that important. For the wattle, part or the woven part, you know, the wicker things that come between your fence posts. I'm just using plain cardboard or cardstock, the thing in the back when you buy like a block of paper, and then just cut it into rough, not really uniform strips. Cover my fence posts in glue, although you don't really need to cover all of them. You can just cover every second or just the 2 last ones to secure your strips. And then I simply weave it in. 1 fence post in front, 1 behind, the next layer the other way around, and just build it up until you're happy with your height. And you could use a different material here. You could use, I don't know, strips of bark or very thin balsa, basically anything that's flexible. But cardboard is really cheap, you know, basically free, or it comes with other things that you buy. And painted, it gives a nice effect. For an item this small, you wouldn't really notice the wood texture, even if you made it out of real wood while playing your game, so why bother? When you're done with your weaving, simply trim all the edges, and that's how it looks right now, unpainted. For painting them, I'm using my lovely cheap wall paints. Again, my muddy greenish gray for the base color of the ground. Just a generous base coat. It also doesn't really matter if you paint some of the fence. Then my brown, I dry brush it heavily with the brown. You can do some stippling to give it more texture, and I also dry brush the ground with the brown to give it some color. And I like to do a rather heavy brown dry brush because it's a middle color between the black and the tan that comes after it. And the tan color can really be just a dusting to give it this highlight to make it look more 3D, not as flat. And basically, in theory, we're ready with our fences right now, but we're gonna make them look a little bit more fancy. I covered the bases in glue, and I noticed that the edges of the cardboard didn't really cover with the sand as I wanted them to. So I also covered the edges to flock them with my herb mixture. You can do some weathering on the fences. I used some of my dark green wash, but I didn't really like how it looked. I wanted these fences to be a little bit more pristine than what I usually do, so I left it out. And again, at this point you're basically done. You could just use them as they are, but I'm gonna decorate them a little bit more. Here you see my collection of different things. I also wanted to try out making longer tufts of grass with an old brush that I dyed a tiny little bit green at the base and left yellowish at the top to show this drying grass. Not completely dry, not completely dead yet, but drying. So this is how it looks in the end, and you can make it as simple or as complicated as you want. You know, you can supplement the cardboard for like very thin balsa strips or bark, as I said before, you know. You can make the fence posts out of toothpicks or out of matchsticks instead of toothpicks. You can do the flocking as complicated as you wish. You know, you can make a part of the fence collapsed. You can do really whatever you want, but this is the basic stuff. And really basic, simple little scatter terrain is what makes the whole table pop, you know. The big buildings are what make the gameplay possible, you know, the big line of sight blockers and multiple stories for your warband to hide and shoot from above. But these little fences and piles of rubble, crates and stuff like this is what gives your whole board a character and a story. And I don't really like to have much of a story in my terrain or in my pieces of terrain, but I like to have a story in my overall table. And if you like it, if you want to see more and learn more, don't forget to like and subscribe, click the bell icon, and I hope I see you again in the next video. Bye!